bud.
Okay.
Sorry, there are multiple chairs in here.
This chair looks more comfortable.
And Mr. Gillick, did you also want to start the signatures in lieu process today?
Sure.
Packet, it's going to be you. Alright, so before we get started, my name is Matthew Selby. I am in the Campaign Services Division. Most of your work you'll be dealing with either me, Gregory, or Aurora. We're also at the front counter, so if you ever have any questions and you want to call in, you're likely going to be speaking to one of the three of us. So, today we're going to be going over both the signatures in lieu process and the nomination process. They are two separate processes, but if you follow along, it's not going to be that, not too difficult. So, first the agenda. So we're going to go over the important dates, and they are statutory deadlines, so you'll definitely want to keep an eye on them. The signatures in lieu process. We're going to be going over signature requirements and petition examples. Did you want a larger?
Can I get a copy of that?
Yeah, sure. So.
Okay, thanks.
So I can get you a copy. It's the same thing. It's just a little bit smaller. That's all.
Oh, okay. I didn't notice that. Got it. Thanks. Here you go.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're different stakeholders in the room right now, so that's the only reason for that.
Got it.
Okay, and then we're going to be going over the circulators and their requirements, and I'm also going to be showing you an example of the petitions themselves, how to fill them out, how not to fill them out, and for every year someone submits petitions that we have to reject, whether it's the signature doesn't match, the residential address doesn't match, they've printed their signature instead of signing it, anything like that. We're going to go through each thing. Then we're going to go over the nomination process. There's a list of nomination documents that you're going to want to familiarize yourself with. While we're going to go over these documents today, we won't be issuing you the documents until the nomination process begins, or the nomination period begins, which isn't until December. So I've got some time from that. We're going to go over the public examination of nomination documents. There are two different nomination periods. One period is for candidate materials. The other period is for the translated or transliterated Chinese name that's been provided by the department. And then we're finally going to go over other resources for candidates. So that's essentially what we're going to be going over today. It's not going to take that long. So the signatures in lieu filing fee period, as you know, begins today. The statutory deadline is actually Christmas Day. We will not be open for Christmas Day. So, as it is a holiday, it does roll over to the next working day. So your last day to turn in signatures is going to be December 26th. We will be open that day. The nomination period begins December 15th and ends January 9th. We do recommend people get all of their documents in before the nomination deadline, just in case there are any issues with any of the documents. We can't go back after the fact and, let you edit anything. And again, the two public examination periods, the first one, January 10th through the 20th, the second, January 20th through the 30th, and then the last important date is the withdrawal of candidacy deadline, which is January 30th. And you'll see that coincides with the last day for the public examination. And that only applies if you're an official candidate. So if you're an unofficial candidate and you decide prior to the nomination deadline that you don't want to run for office, you want to pull out your name, there's actually nothing that you need to do. You just won't be moving forward as an official candidate. So the signatures in lieu of filing fee process. This is an optional process, but we are glad that you're here. The filing fee, if you've read through the candidate materials, the filing fee is $500. And you may submit signatures. It's 1,000 signatures. It's 50 cents per signature. There have been candidates who have covered their complete filing fee with signatures, so you can do that. However, if you go over the required amount, we won't be issuing a refund or anything like that. So petitions are issued by the department. You'll see in your packet we have provided you with the petitions themselves. When we go over the examples, you can definitely read through your petition as well and follow along. And they can be submitted on a rolling basis. The main reason for this, and the reason why you would want to do this, say there are 3 candidates for Board of Supervisors District 8, and you have about 1,000 signatures that you want to turn in, but if half of those people have signed a petition for someone else, and that candidate has also turned in those signatures before you, that will count towards their signatures, not yours. So you want to get these in as soon as possible. All right, so what makes a signature valid? What makes a signature invalid? So anytime you have someone signing your petition, you want to make sure that they are a registered voter in your supervisor district. One of the things that you do have access to, and we'll go over this a little bit later, is the master voter file. It's essentially the list of all of the voters here in the city and county. And so when you are collecting these signatures, one of the things that you can do is cross-reference. If they've put their residential address down and it doesn't match, you can cross it out and it won't count. Also, the signature that they provide has to match the signature that's on the registration record. And if you have a voter who is not sure what their signature is, they can come in and we won't show them the signature, but what we'll do is we'll allow them to provide a sample and we'll let them know if it matches or not. Okay? So what makes a signature invalid? If it's not legible, then we won't be able to count it. So you want to make sure that whoever is your circulator, you want them to make sure that whoever's signing, it's legible, right? They've signed the petition more than once. There are 10 sections, or 10 slots on the petition. You don't want the same person signing multiple sections. So if they've not provided a signature, so if they've not provided the signature, we won't be able to count that as well. And if they provide a residential address that is either not in the city or not in the supervisor district, they have to be qualified to be able to vote for you. Therefore, if they're signing this and their residential address is District 3, District 1, then it wouldn't count towards your signatures in lieu. They have to provide a residential address, so if they're putting a post office address, they're putting a mailing address, we won't be able to count that either. Or if someone has withdrawn their signature, people do have the opportunity to withdraw their signature, whether it's for signatures in lieu or nomination papers. They do have to submit it in writing, and it does have to be submitted prior to your turning in of the petitions. And again, if the signature doesn't compare, then we won't be able to count it. So now we're going to go over the petitions themselves just to give you a visual representation. So you'll see here there are 5 people have signed. 4 of them are not able to be counted. 1 is able to be counted. You'll see the first section. I'm sorry, I don't have a pointer with me. But the first section, Mr. Bronson, he filled it out correctly. However, that address, the Bridgeview address, is not in District 8, so we wouldn't be able to count that. Similar to number 2, Mr. Coburn filled it out correctly. However, the Beak Street address is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It is also not able to be counted. Unfortunately, we have had this before. People who are residents in Oakland, the residents in San Mateo, they think, oh, but it's California, it's all the same, this should count. And then we have to break the bad news to them. It happens more than you would think. I don't know why it happens that much. People should know. So the third one, 2 problems with this. Mr. Vaughn has not provided a signature, and he's also provided a mailing address. So again, we wouldn't be able to count that. So number 4, you'll see Mr. Mello. Everything is correct. So the signature matches. The address provided does match their residential address on their record. And so that one's good to go. That's 50 cents off of your $500 filing fee. And number 5, Mrs. Mello, you would think that's okay, the same last name, the signature matches, but unfortunately, they put ditto marks. Now, they might be a married couple, they might live at the same address, but if you're not writing a residential address down, we wouldn't be able to count it. So, and we unfortunately get this a lot too, when there are 5 or 6 registered voters at the same address. They all want to sign a petition. They all want to participate in the democracy, but 5 of them put ditto marks, and we can't count that, unfortunately. So when it's either you that's circulating or someone that's circulating on your behalf, make sure that these are filled out correctly so that you won't have to pay your filing fee. So we have circulator requirements. Circulators do have to be 18 years old. So if you have children that are under the age of 18, they can't circulate for you. And as a candidate, you may circulate your own petition. There's nothing against that as well. There's going to be an affidavit of circulator that we're going to go over next. It does have to be completed prior to turning in the petitions themselves, and they do have to be completed by hand, so you wouldn't be able to type something. All right. So there's one section of the affidavit of circulator that we're going to complete for you, and if you want to look at your own petition, let's see. Yeah, so if you're looking at your own petition, the back of the page, and I think we provided like 5 petitions for you. If you're looking at the back of the page, you'll see that your name is already pre-printed as a candidate where it should be. The rest has to be completed by hand. So the first section, the first line is going to be the circulator, not the candidate, unless, of course, you are circulating yourself, but you'll still want to handwrite that. And you'll want to provide your residential address. And the section where it gets kind of tricky for some candidates, there's a section where it's going to ask you, all signatures to this document were obtained between 2 dates. Now, some people, they see that and they just put the beginning of the sig and lieu period and the end of the sig and lieu period. But that's not what you want to do. So each section you'll see where it says date signed, you want to essentially take the 2 dates from that. Okay? And then of course, your signing. Now this is important because, again, like we've had candidates or their authorized representatives turn in petitions without the affidavit of circulator completed. And if we don't have the affidavit completed, we can't process these. Now you can come back, if it's before the deadline, you can come back and complete the affidavit of circulator. But there are many things that can happen in between those 2 days, so you want to make sure that it's completed, when you're turning these in. All right, so the nomination process. Again, it begins December 15th and goes to January 9th. So you do have required nomination documents and also one optional nomination document. Everything has to be turned in during this period. You can't turn anything afterwards. If you do try to turn in things afterwards, you won't become a candidate. We've had people in the past who've tried to turn in their declaration of candidacy after the fact. We weren't allowed to make them a candidate. So the first thing is the nomination paper. You won't actually have to worry about this if you're collecting signatures in lieu. It's essentially 20 nomination signatures from qualified voters, but if you've collected more than 20 signatures in lieu of your filing fee, then you're set. There is an affidavit of acceptance and the use of in lieu petition signatures as nomination signatures, which is essentially just another form that's saying, I would like to use the signatures that I've collected as my nomination signatures. For any elected office in the city, you do have to collect nomination signatures, but you can also use the signatures in lieu. Let's see. So the declaration of candidacy, there are multiple sections to this. The declaration of filing under legal name, the name as it should appear on the ballot, and these are 2 different things. One good example I like to give people for the last mayoral election, of course, the mayor is Edwin Lee. For the declaration of filing under legal name, in this section, he listed Edwin Lee because that is his legal name. But the name that should appear on the ballot, he's commonly known as Ed Lee, so he listed Ed Lee in this section. That is allowed, if you go by a nickname and it's, commonly established, then you can put it in this section as well. So your name in Chinese. You do have the option of providing your own Chinese or transliterated or translated Chinese name. It will be reviewed, however. If you do not want to submit a Chinese name, we will provide one for you. And one of the reasons why, if you submit a Chinese name, that it will be reviewed. In the past, we've had people submit Chinese names that have nothing to do with, who they are, any descriptors at all. So we did have to review that. We let them know that it's rejected, and then they have the opportunity to provide a new Chinese name. And the last section is the sworn statement of eligibility and the oath of office. This is essentially, the oath of office, the duty that you will be partaking if you are elected. It's essentially you are swearing to uphold the Constitution of the State of California and the Constitution of the United States. But we'll go over that as well during the nomination period when we issue you the documents. So this is a section where there's always some struggle between the candidates and the department. The ballot designation worksheet. It's the title that appears beneath your name on the ballot. What's very important here, and I've also provided you with a list of acceptable and unacceptable designations. You have 3 words. It has to be your principal vocation or your principal source of income. It has to be as generic as possible. And those are the main things. Here in the city, we do often get people that, you know, they want to be creative with what they provide, and sometimes we can't accept it. We've had candidates who have wanted to use designations like public transit rider. That's not a vocation, and it's also not a source of income. But they've tried to challenge us on that. So when you are coming up with this, just, you know, be sure to follow the directions so that there are no issues. Whatever you do decide to go with can also be challenged by the public as well. There's another section where we're essentially going to go over this, but that's another thing to keep in mind when you are filling out this form. So the Statement of Economic Interest, or the FPPC Form 700, there's some confusion as to, you know, where you're filing this, whether you're filing this with us or you're filing this with the Ethics Commission. As a candidate, during the nomination process, you are filing it with us. And it's essentially a form that is, you know, conflict of interest. If you have a conflict of interest, this is a form that you're going to be filling out. Even if you don't have a conflict of interest, you'll still be filling it out. There's going to be a section where it's going to ask you, you know, if you have any, you know, holdings, anything like that. You're going to be listing it there. If you don't, you're also going to make the statement that you don't. And so the last section, or the last nomination document, is optional. It is the Qualification Statement. It is a statement that's going to be published in the voter information pamphlet. There's a 200-word limit. And if you would like anyone to, you know, endorse you, anything like that, if you're using their name, you know, if you're invoking their name as support, you do have to provide written support, written confirmation from that person. Or if they are one of your nominators, you know, if they've signed your SIGs and lieu form, if they've signed your nomination paper, then you actually don't have to provide this. If it's an organization, we will need something on letterhead from the organization, you know, providing support. So again, the public examination of nomination documents. 2 periods. Candidate materials are the first period, so they can review your legal name, your qualification statement, your designation, the Chinese name that you've provided, and any challenge has to be submitted in writing to the department during this period. In the past, we've had people try to challenge designations that have come in on the 11th day. Unfortunately, that's outside of the window, and we wouldn't be able to accept that challenge. If a challenge is submitted, we do notify the candidate immediately through whatever contact information they provided us. We send a letter, we will call, we will email, you know, any method of contact that you've provided us, we will reach out in that way. So the second period, anything that's been provided by the department, well, not anything, but the Chinese name that's been provided by the department, this is your opportunity to review that. So, for example, if you've requested that we provide a Chinese name for you, or a Chinese translated name for you, and during this period, during this 10-day period, you see the name, you don't like the name, you want to challenge the name, it does have to be in writing to the department during this period. And then we'll go from there. And so the resources for candidates, I believe you've been provided with both the guide and the calendar. What we also have, and I've provided in your packet, the master voter file information. Again, it's the list of all of the registered voters. And every candidate needs to get that for campaign purposes, for pretty much anything, especially when they're trying to do 6 in lieu or nomination signatures. It's good to have that cross-reference. Let's see. So on the left, you'll see our contact information. On the right, you'll see the Ethics Commission. Any financial questions that you have, do not come to us, because we are going to direct you directly to the Ethics Commission. We won't answer any questions. We'll just send you to them. And they're a really good resource to have as well. We have questions for them all the time. We're reaching out to them, but definitely call them. And I believe you've already gone over there, so yeah. So you know they can answer all your questions about financials. And that's actually the last slide. So that's all we had. I'm sorry that you are the only candidate here. I wish more would have come, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Maybe after we
Sure.
are not live anymore?
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right.
Questions about
Cool. All right, so thank you for coming. As I said, wasn't going to take that long. It's less than half an hour. One thing to keep in mind about this election specifically, because it is going to be on the June ballot and it is going to be on the November ballot, there will be some interlapping. So even if you run for this office and you do win, you would still need to do all the paperwork, all this same paperwork for November as well. We've gotten a number of questions about this, like why is this on the ballot, and so it's just one thing to keep in mind for all the candidates. Some candidates have only filed for November without knowing that they also have to file for June. Unfortunately, the department can't reach out to these candidates to let them know, hey, you also have to file for June, because that's incumbent upon the candidate themselves. Yeah, so that's it. We can take this back to the front counter.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you guys for. Don't worry. Don't worry about it. It's good. It's good. Oh, it can fall.
You sure?
Yep.